So the recording started. Hello. I'm
Hello,
I'm Sam,
I'm Maddie.
and this is the coffee plant review. Today we're
Yay.
reviewing Old School by Tobias Wolff.
Lovely. Quite lovely.
There are a bunch
Yes.
of random air sounds coming from your microphone, Maddie.
Interesting because you sound kind of weird, but it's fine.
It's fine. Okay. So, let's start off with the first chapter. It's called Class Picture. So in this chapter, it's basically talking about how the school is run because this book takes place in a school.
Yep.
And
Like Catholic private school, I think.
yeah.
It sounds pretty Catholic because of this chapter
Yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
The
and
honor code.
they do have to go to chapel, and it's an all boys school.
Mm-hmm.
There's also this sister school or something where it's
Yeah,
an all
Miss
girls school.
K-Box, I think. Miss K-Box.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm saying that right.
something like
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
But anyways, yeah. And what's special about this school is that it has a high focus on English and literature. So every year, or was it wait, was it every
Every
year?
year they get like three. I think it's almost every like trimester they get a new speaker because they got three during the main speakers sixth year. Sixth year is when you can apply to like meet the author
Yeah.
or the poet or the just writer in general.
Yeah.
Um, so since they saw three in that year, I'm guessing they have trimesters. Um, so
Okay, yeah. So, so they meet a famous writer, and they choose who does this by um a contest. So they basically have a writing contest, and based on whatever the writer's famous for, if they're famous for poetry, they would write poetry. And what happens is I think it was the dean that reviews it first and selects.
no, it's the master.
Okay.
Because remember in the last part, it was talking about how Mr. Ramsey read the stories. So
Okay.
I think it's the literature master or like the English
Oh
master.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
yeah. So
yeah, the English master reads the
and it's yeah, and then he
whatever this
submits
is.
the three best to whoever the guest speaker or like writer
Yeah.
is going to be.
Yeah, and this is kind of like a big event. The guest speaker comes and talks to everyone, I believe, and then
Mm-hmm.
they later on they go with this the winner, and they get to have a private conversation with the winner.
Yeah, and they get to walk through like the I think it's the headmaster's like rose garden or something.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and then during this chapter, the narrator who remains unnamed throughout the whole book talks about some of the best writers at his school. Um, One of them is
George
George.
Kellogg,
Yeah,
George Kellogg, Bill White, I think Purcell,
yeah, and Purcell.
who's who's yeah, Big Jeff and Little Jeff. Um,
Uh,
and then I don't know if there's another one that he talked about. I think just those
yeah,
three.
those are the most important students.
Yeah, and they're like his friends. Like Bill White is his roommate, and then George is his friend, and so is Purcell.
Yeah. And so from what he writes, he's saying that George writes really good poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
They say he's really like sentimental and like he's like too nice, I think is how he's like described. Like
Yeah,
he wants to be nice to everyone and he doesn't like insulting people, which is why like how he's the editor for the like newspaper. George wants to
yeah,
like argue for like every single thing that's submitted, and then like Purcell I think is kind of the opposite. He's like no um no like filter. He'll just tell you what he doesn't like about it.
mm-hmm. And then Purcell, I think, I mean, Purcell seems like a kid who's like more like reserved.
Mm-hmm.
It says that he habitually kept his arms folded across his chest, and yeah, that like tells you a lot about his character, since like you know that shows that he's not wanting to open up and talk to other people.
Yeah,
But like they're all pretty good writers, I'm pretty sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's the next one? I think the next one's on fire. I'm sure. I'm sure. After class picture, is it on fire?
I I believe so. Yeah.
Um, it's on fire.
Yeah, it's on fire.
Yeah. So basically, in that chapter, he kind of just mostly speaks about the like smoking incident. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
where like these boys in this building, like they say it started by like a cigarette, and so there's a big, huge no smoking rule in the school, but kids still do it. And if you get caught smoking, then it's like immediate expulsion.
Yeah. And the narrator says that he is a common smoker, and because of the rule, it kind of makes him want to do it more. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like he kind of gets a
Until like
thrill out of like almost getting caught.
yeah, until like he sees that other boy get caught, and he's like worried that he's gonna get ratted out, and then he doesn't, and so he just like throws away everything that day and doesn't smoke again.
Yeah. And then now this is also where they like show the character of the school. They when there's like a fire, because there was a fire in this chapter set to a building, people like firemen came, and like all the boys in the school, they like ran out their classes to go look at the fire, and the boys were called drill starved boys. So it's like their lives seem like really boring because they have to live at the school and like attend classes every day.
Yeah, basically their whole like life right like revolves around their education, and then like the church practices and like the honor code and like what college they're gonna get into, which is kind of like and like the whole like scholarship thing, like where they're like they don't speak of where they came from, and they try to keep their identities like a secret. It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting.
And then here they also talk about Big Jeff, which was Jeff Purcell's um like cousin, and they're
Yeah,
just
they're
saying,
both named Jen.
yeah, and they're just saying that he was a vegetarian.
Yeah, and he always advocates for the animals and such.
Yeah, and like he cares about his um younger sibling, but like it seems like little Jeff doesn't really care about him as much.
Yeah. But like as the story progresses, you kind of like see that he does actually care about his cousin.
Yeah, he just
Um,
like doesn't like to show it.
Yeah, like especially with like the whole chapel thing at the end. Um, yeah, we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
And then the next chapter I think is Frost. Um, yeah, the next chapter after On Fire is Frost, and I think it's basically just like showing. Um,
Yeah.
isn't
So
this where
yeah, this is
Frost
where
comes?
George Kellogg won the contest and he was granted an audience with Frost.
Yeah, and like the whole thing is kind of funny because George thought his poem was like an homage or something to Robert Frost, whereas Robert Frost thought it was like more of a poking fun at him, which was kind of funny. And George was like really stressed out about it and almost didn't go to the meeting.
Yeah. And like yeah, this like adds on to George's kind character because everybody who knew George basically knew that he wasn't trying to like poke fun at Robert Frost or anything. However, like Robert Frost didn't actually know George. So when he read the poem, he interpreted it in a different way than what George had intended. But that interpretation where Frost was like basically being bullied by George, like he thought it was more comical, and that's like why like George
Okay.
won basically.
Yeah.
And then the narrator is like kind of mad that
Hmm.
George like doesn't want to go see Frost, and like he's I think in the end he convinces George to like actually go with Frost.
Yeah.
And in the book, they also compared Frost to a glamorous woman.
They did.
They did on page 45.
Interesting. I don't recall.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a small reference, but like I saw it and I thought that was really interesting because like all these boys, they're like away from any kind of woman. So like when they see Frost as something desirable, like something they want to
Yeah.
talk to and go see,
Hmm.
like it kind of increases like what it means to be able to like talk to Frost.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like saying like only a woman you would think would get that much of a reaction out of like, all the boys, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, let's just move on to the next chapter. So, this chapter, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like a U with two dots on top, and then
Yeah, it's like
Burmist.
German, I think.
Yeah.
I really don't know how to say that.
Uh, okay, I think this chapter was the one where the narrator got caught whistling,
No, I honestly
right?
think that was way before this.
Was it?
I honestly think it was.
I don't know. We probably
Um,
skipped over it then.
yeah, I think we did. Yeah, we did skip over it. It was like way in the beginning.
Okay, you want to go back to that then?
Um, sure.
Okay.
That was in the chapter class picture. It was in the first chapter.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, yes. So basically, when the main speaker was before he went to school, he was working in a camp, like washing dishes, and is like the chef would like whistle tunes and sing songs to like just keep their spirits up. And so he kept like those in his memory. And when he was walking up the steps behind the janitor, I don't Gershon, I think. Yeah. When he was walking behind him up the stairs, he started whistling because he was happy, but he didn't realize like what the song meant and that he had like offended the
Yeah.
janitor guy.
Yeah,
Um,
because he's never heard the words of the song, but it was basically like a Nazi song, and the janitor was Jewish. So,
mhm.
yeah, he thought, um, like, he was trying to, like, whistle some kind of Nazi march to a Jewish person. And, yeah, being Jewish is, like, another theme in this book.
Yeah, it comes across a lot, like with the he explains how like the Jewish boys have like their apartness, I is what he calls it, like in the group of people, and how Bill White, he figures out that Bill is Jewish, and he like thought like Bill had hidden it so well and like knew never to speak of it because I guess they found it a bad thing for some reason at that school. Then
Yeah,
he talked about how his father was Jewish, but he didn't really want to call him. Well, he didn't really know whether or not he was Jewish because he was raised Catholic.
yeah.
Um,
So, like, he basically tried to deny part of himself because like the society around him believed it was bad.
mhm.
You know?
Yeah. So then, like, we go on to the next chapter that we can't pronounce.
Okay.
You don't really want to try and pronounce it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, the
Yeah,
next visitor's name was like
Ayn
Ayn
Rand.
Rand.
I pronounced it Anne.
Ayn Rand. Yeah.
How did you pronounce it?
Honestly, sometimes I'm reading, I just recognize the shape of the words and just be like, okay.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes I don't even try to pronounce it in my head.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also do that. Like,
Maybe I
yeah.
did like Ayn Rand. I don't know.
Ayn Rain. Like the Lorraine who comes in later. Okay. Um, or like Roke. Roke. I think that was the character's name.
Roke.
Roke. Roke in
Who's
the
Roke?
Fountainhead. Is the Fountainhead an actual book?
I don't know. Honestly,
Because like I know Robert Frost and Ernest Hemingway are real, but I'm
yeah.
not sure if Anne Rand is real because I've never heard of that name. Do you know if she's real?
Wait. I just searched it up, and it seems like she is actually a real person.
She is.
It says The Fountainhead is a 1943 novel by a Russian American author, Anne Rand, her first major literary success. The
I
no,
really hope she wasn't that like mean.
yeah, yeah, she seemed like really out there in the book.
Yeah, I thought this book was like like I mean not non fiction. I thought it was fiction. Is it not fiction?
Yeah, this book is fiction, but it
Yeah,
uses a lot of things from real life. So,
yeah,
it's written kind of like a memoir. And that
yeah.
might be one of the reasons why the speaker's name was never really mentioned. It's because like you're supposed to just assume that the speaker is like kind of the author, even though none of
Mhm.
this actually happened.
Yeah, it's psychological fiction according to Google. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means, but cool. Yeah, so Anne Rand apparently was yeah, she was only coming because of like the main what was it called? The main guy that was giving the school money, he like recommended Ayn Rand as a speaker, and the headmaster wanted to like please him because the headmaster had been like trying to get a new fundraising opportunity up, and he needed the guy's support, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, what was the guy's name? Oh, it was the chairman of the board of trustees. Um, Hiram Dufresne. I can't pronounce half the names of this book. Anyway, so um, he wanted to start a drive for scholarship funds, and he needed the chairman's support. So he decided to get Ayn Rand to come and speak.
Yeah. And Ayn Rand, like, yeah, she's not really like the most friendly person. Um,
Mm,
but before like she came to the school, or like before she was even announced to come to the school, uh people already thought that like her books, like since they were popular, they were thinking that like it's not really good, even though
yeah,
like
like
they never
the
even read a
masters of the
single one
school.
from her.
Yeah, the masters of the school, and then the speaker reads the Fountainhead, and then he starts to like admire her and like um her work. Yeah, and he like identifies with the thing being like, what was the theme? Being like, I don't really remember. He
uh,
was, he's like living for yourself. I think what it was
yeah,
like, not doing things for others.
yeah,
And he kind of took that as like a good thing because he interpreted it differently than what the author meant. And so when Ayn Rand came and like described everything, and she was like insulting other authors like Ernest Hemingway, he soon came to realize like she meant something completely different than he had taken it.
yeah. And like one of the authors that like he admires the most is Ernest Hemingway, and like since she was like every single author that is not her is like not a good writer. And
Yeah, I
Ernest,
think she only like recommended like one guy. She was like this Mike guy, I think his name was Mike. Not entirely sure.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. So yeah, the narrator just like lost all respect for her like after she
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah,
Um,
she even got like super insulted when a boy asked who was like John Galt, I think. And I think John Galt was like the main character of Atlas, Atlas. I think that's what her book was called.
yeah,
Um, her other book, and she got super offended. So it's like, yeah. So
mhm,
yeah, it's Atlas Shrugged. So
yeah. And
mhm.
also, when the narrator read The Fountainhead, like he's kind of started to hate. Was it his parents, or was it like his step parents, or like were they?
He hated his grandfather and his grandfather's like girlfriend, Patty.
Oh yeah,
Um,
because they're like
Especially when he
nice
was like in bed, like when he was in bed because he got sick, with like with
pneumonia.
pneumonia, and yeah, he had to be like in bed rest, and they would like tend to his every like need and stuff, and like he'd be like, "Wow, you guys are like so pathetic for like caring for me like this," and it was like, and then he later realized like how good of a people they like how good such good people they are for doing that for him.
Yeah, but yeah, basically. And like the characters in The Fountainhead, they were described as like kind of unrealistic. Like these
Mm,
characters don't actually exist in real life. While
yeah.
other characters from like other literary writers are, they're like more realistic and you see people like them in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Um. Oh yeah, and also the narrator liked drunk people just because like
What?
yeah, like
Like drunk people.
yeah, because like he was saying that drunk people like lived for themselves and like didn't care about other people.
Yeah,
So like
that makes sense.
yeah, that's why he like started to just be like, oh yeah, drunk people are great. They're like not caring about other people.
Yeah, drunk people are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think after Ayn Rand leaves, um,
Yeah. Oh,
then Mrs. Ramsey leaves.
Mrs. Ramsey leaves.
Yes, Roberta Ramsey.
Roberta
She
Ramsey.
leaves at like the beginning of spring.
The
And that's
beginning
when
of
they also
spring.
like announced that like Ernest Hemingway is gonna be the next
Wait,
person.
what? Are you on the next chapter?
Yes, I
Wait,
think so.
we didn't even finish this chapter yet though. We didn't even talk about how Big Jeff won the contest.
Oh, but that was way before we went into the next chapter.
Wait,
Anyway, we'll go back.
what?
So we can go back to Big Jeff winning without death.
Yeah. Wait, what chapter were you on?
I was on what was it called? I was on. I was the one before the fourth time or something.
The one
I
before
think Slice of Life.
the slice of life.
Slice of Life. Yeah, Slice of Life. That's where I was.
Oh,
But you're going back to the one before the Slice of
okay. Yeah,
Life.
I wasn't like turning the pages to where I read where I was talking about. I was like saying that from memory. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Okay.
that's a pretty long chapter.
Yeah. So,
So,
yeah, Big Jeff won the contest to be with Ayn Rand. And that's like kind of ironic because like his whole thing is like being a vegetarian and caring about others and animals even, but Ayn Rand is more like don't care about anyone else but yourself. So
yeah. And then he literally asks, and Rand, like, do you, so, like, don't you, like, not eat meat or whatever? Because he's like, well, you have to be, like, vegetarian or I don't know if he's vegetarian or vegan. I think he's just
he's
vegetarian.
vegetarian.
Yeah, he's vegetarian, and he's like, sorry. And the teachers were like, well, you picked his story. Like, sorry, he didn't think that. Sorry that he thought you agreed with his ideals, and she thought his ideals were like really stupid and made fun of them, even though she chose his story, which was
Yeah. I think she interpreted his story a little bit differently too. Like
mm-hmm.
I think like she was thinking like the cows were like a metaphor for other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was like the incompetence of the victims. And they don't believe the heroes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
They were confused.
yeah.
So are we gonna move on to
Yeah,
the next
sure.
chapter?
So what chapter are we on now?
Now we're on slice of life.
Yum.
Um, yeah, and this is where he kind of talks about where like all his respect for Ayn Rand like leaves, and he starts to see the books in a different light, and she and how he like really respected Hemingway, and how like I couldn't believe that she just respected him. So then he started like rereading all of Hemingway's books and such.
Mm. He's young, still calls his father daddy. That's just a line in the book.
Where?
On page 95.
95?
Let's see. It says there's a moment at the end of Indian camp when Nick's father is rowing them home after delivering a baby by.
Oh yeah, he's young, still calls his father
Says-
daddy. Now they're
Yeah.
crossing the lake towards home, Nick trailing his hand in the water. And what does he feel? Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
nice.
What was it talking about over here?
It's talking about Indian Camp, which is a book by Hemingway, I believe,
Oh,
that he was reading again.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so, and then after that, he began like typing the books out via typewriter to like feel how it would feel to write something that great. And he started like typing out the books on his typewriter. And then he had like just finished like two of them when the headmaster had announced that Ernest Hemingway was going to be the next writer.
Yes.
And everyone started looking at the dean.
Yeah, because like everyone thought that he like had a connection and pulled some strings to get Hemingway to come.
Yeah, but Dean Mark Dean Makepeace was just as surprised as everyone else.
Yeah. Okay.
And
And
then we move on to Fork's Tongue.
wow.
Fork's Tongue, and that's when Mrs. Ramsey leaves. Hooray! Just
Alright,
kidding.
alright.
She actually seemed kind of nice. I don't know. She didn't appear very much. And then she was like, wasn't she? Yeah, she. Anyway, yeah. So she simply vanished, and Mr. Ramsey was very sad.
Mm.
And that was.
I have a sticky note that says narrator assumes things about Purcell at the top of page 108. I'm trying to find
Um,
out like what I was trying to say.
oh, he assumed how logic worked for Purcell. He like he thought Purcell thought like him.
Okay.
Um,
Wait, what was the Oh, was this when Purcell stopped attending the chapel?
mhm. Yeah,
Oh.
and how he was trying to get Purcell to go. He was like, "Just go. You don't have to believe in everything. Just go because you want to stay in school." And he was like, "Well, why would I go if I don't believe in it or whatever?"
Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
speaker thought that Purcell would think the same as him and think it was no big deal to go, whereas Purcell thought it was just like pointless, I guess.
Yeah. Cuz it was more like he would be a liar if he went to chapel, but he didn't
Mm-hmm.
actually believe in anything they were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like
Yeah.
that kind of like worsened their friendship. So,
Yeah,
mm,
it kind of did. And then after that, it sort of goes on to talk about how he wants to go and attend Columbia. Um,
mm, and
he
like
had
he,
majorly picked it because he liked how none of the other students in his class would probably go there.
mm, oh, and also after Hemingway was announced, everyone just like had a hard time, or like a lot of people had a hard time with writing
Mm-hmm.
because like pretty much everyone like respected Hemingway.
Yeah, everyone wanted to get to meet Hemingway. So all the
Yeah,
sixth years were like working very, very hard on their writing.
yeah,
Um, yeah. Like it even shows like George like giving up on his editor like work
yeah.
and like yeah, and how the speaker like throws away multiple of his ideas because he can't think of one that's good enough. Um,
Hmm. And like he would be like sitting in his room trying to write something, and he would hear people outside like talking and laughing,
yeah,
and
and
like
he even like misses the school dance. I think
yeah.
because he was like trying to write.
But the thing was that when he missed the school dance, he still didn't write anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think he was just sitting there thinking
Yeah,
about writing, and like he
yeah, and
just
there was
couldn't
whole
write.
his whole interaction with Bill. I think
Yeah.
yeah, where he's like, maybe I should talk to Bill because they had become no closer as like roommates. He was like, that's kind of sad, but he didn't really want to spill his life onto Bill and trust him that much. He was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, doing great on writing.
Yeah, because like at the end, like he actually didn't open up to Bill, even though he kind of wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, yeah, and then there was like the day of like where Purcell had to like go to what is it called? Where Big Jeff was like saying that he would leave if Purcell was expelled or for not going to chapel, he would leave too. And Purcell got really mad because he was like, "You're not allowed to do that." Um, and so he ends up going to chapel because he doesn't want to he doesn't want to take Big Jeff out of the school because um, Big Jeff loves the school like a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Next chapter.
um,
So
yeah,
the next chapter is called "When in Disgrace with Fortune."
no, we have to stay in that one for a bit.
Oh,
So
okay.
then, after the after that, he was what was it called? They had the newspaper meeting, and that's when he had to take up George's work for him, and that's where he discovered the story "Summer Dance"
Oh
in
yeah.
the records.
Yeah,
Um,
and this one was from Mrs. Cobb's school. So it
mhm.
was from like a girl, and like it was interesting because like at their school they probably thought that girls like weren't good at anything. So like he was kind of surprised to see that a girl wrote a story that was like really good. And it was really good because it was very personal, but he also saw like himself in the story.
Yeah, he saw it as his like story in word form,
Yeah.
and so then which caused him to end up rewriting it with new names and such, and
Yeah.
plagiarize it as his own.
And when I was reading it, I kind of felt like he wasn't plagiarizing it because it made it sound like
Mhm.
he like kind of wrote it because he was saying that it was like so similar to his own life that it was his life. And like,
Yeah, I thought he was rewriting it to like be completely different, like
yeah.
surrounding what his life was about instead of exactly what Ruth was dealing with. Like, even though they were so similar, his life, we know from like previous stories of what he said that it was in fact different than that. But he still like just wrote the same thing.
Yeah. And like I think he was kind of surprised when people said that was plagiarized because he felt like it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. He felt like it was his story, and he even like said that to Mr. Ramsey like later. He was like, "Oh, my story," and then he's like, "No, you mean Susan Friedman's story. I think her name is Susan Friedman. I think I'm not sure." Um,
Yeah.
so, so then now we can move on to the next chapter.
Okay. When in disgrace with fortune.
Yeah. And that's when Mr. Ramsey pulls him aside and is like, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's when he pulls Mr. Ramsey pulls him aside and is like, "Wow, your story was amazing," and Ernest Hemingway chose it, and he'd been like so surprised and stuff. And then I think the next day when they're eating breakfast, people keep flashing him looks and stuff and asking him and like praising him for like doing such good on the story.
Yeah.
And then he reads um, the interview from Mr. Ramsey and Ernest Hemingway, and he kind of feels like cheated in a way because
Uh,
he feels like you shouldn't censor Ernest Hemingway.
yeah, because like um when I was like reading what they were saying the conversation was, I was so confused because there were like a bunch of lines
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea why there were just like lines right there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what they even meant.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't think of a word that would fit there. Um, like in a few of the places.
Yeah. And also like um when they were like interviewing Ernest Hemingway, he didn't really talk about the story either.
Mm-hmm. We just talked about like writing in general, kind of.
Yeah. And like giving
He kind of like
advice.
was like, yeah, like be like lay off the sauce, which I think is like alcohol. Um, yeah, and then he was like, don't talk about your writing, keep your friends, don't lose them, and then such. Like he ends it with, "That's the sermon for today," which it kind of did feel like. It kind of felt like he was just preaching
Yeah.
about what you should do with your life. Yeah, and then when they're like leaving breakfast, George like kind of talks to him and is like, if I hadn't seen your name on it, I wouldn't have thought it was yours. And
Oh
like
yeah.
that kind of happens again with Bill, and Bill's like why did you like steal it or whatever? He was like, that's my story, and it was confusing, and I didn't really understand that part.
Oh.
Where
I
Bill was
think
like,
it's
yeah.
because like in the way that it was written, it felt very relatable. So it
Mhm.
feels like it's his story too. And it's also because like I think there was something in there about going to something like that Catholic people don't really go to, I think.
Hmm.
Like it was probably something Jewish. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, he was like, "Have you ever been in a synagogue?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "You're Catholic." And he was like, "Not exactly." And he's like, "Well, yeah." He's kind of like saying you're a liar for like writing that, and when you've never actually like
yeah.
experienced it and such.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that because like the story was like very personal. Like it seemed really personal, but like he's never really experienced going to a synagogue. So that was like it was like just
Mhm.
not honest if he said he went to a synagogue.
Yeah.
You know.
And especially since it said that like he used his own name, then it kind of just really makes sense. Um, yeah. And then like after that, he kind of goes to find Bill to like explain, but then he ends up like in Bill's like little study in the basement. And then he starts to read through Bill's diary. Um, that's a nice way of apologizing.
Yeah. Just like read your diary. Yeah.
Yeah, like I came to apologize to you, but I'm just gonna read your diary instead.
Yeah. Wait, what did he read in the diary again?
Well, you don't find out quite yet, but he kind of read, he learned about the relationship between Bill and Mrs. Ramsey, and how they
Oh,
would like kiss and stuff in the library, and like they had like a nice relationship, kind of.
uh,
But yeah,
uh,
and I think, and on page 141, it says like, I didn't read every word, but I read most of it enough to be overcome by its nakedness and misery, and to understand why he could never have shown a page of it to anyone. So
well,
yeah, like kind of like very secret. So
yeah.
interesting.
And this is kind of interesting because like diaries are more associated with girls. And
Mm-hmm.
like the story that the narrator kind of stole was from a girl and it was very personal. And also like the diary which would have been like kind of similar to the story that he stole was like also really personal. So it's kind of like um maybe Bill should have won because like he
But
just
Bill
has
didn't turn anything in.
yeah, he didn't turn anything in, but like maybe if he wrote something similar to the way in which he wrote his diaries, it could have like won.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is why like Bill was kind of irritated by this because like the way in which it was written was probably really similar to the way he wrote in his diaries.
Yeah, and so maybe he thought that like maybe Bill thought that he had already read his diary, which is why he like was able to write that so like well or whatever like the experiences. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then after that gets called to the dean's office.
Yeah.
And that's when
He
they
gets
ask him about plagiarism.
Wait, what did you say?
And that's when they ask him about plagiarism.
Oh, plagiarism. Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
And then he gets kicked out.
Yeah. And they're just like, bye.
Yeah, I know. And in this school, when you get kicked out, you have to leave like immediately. Like you don't really tell
Yeah.
people that you're leaving. You just
Yeah, no
disappear.
one like knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like vanish. Vamos. Goodbye. They don't really care either. It's
Hmm.
kind of like you just like never existed in the first place,
Yeah.
which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh,
even like Goss is like the what is it called? He's like the president of the students or something. I don't remember what his official name is. Yeah, but he's like even like plagiarism's bad enough, but from like a girl. He's like surprised you plagiarized from a girl.
Yeah, I know. Because, like, a story that's, like, that personal and then it's, like, from the opposite gender, it's kind of like, their lives are so different. Like, they go to
I thought it was
complete.
more of like, wow, you had to resort to getting help from a girl.
I mean, yeah, I think it was like that, but I feel like it was also kind of surprising because, like, people really thought that he wrote it. And I feel like that shows that, like, a girl's life and, like, her thoughts can be, like, really complex, just like how guys' thoughts are. So,
Yeah, anyone's thoughts can be complex.
yeah.
It's just like they, because they're like thoughts because of what kind of environment they've like been raised in like a Catholic all boys boarding school, they start to like believe that the like minds of the girls like across the way at Mrs. Cobb's, I think.
Yeah, Miss
They
Cogs.
start to think that like they're just more superior to them in education.
Yeah.
Yeah, Goss even says like, "I pity your wife and kids if you ever even have any,"
Oh,
which
wow.
is like kind of harsh, no, but
Yeah.
yeah. So then he gets sent home with Mr. Ramsey.
Yeah, so Mr. Ramsey, like, drove him, right? He, like, drove him to the train station. Is that correct?
Yeah, he drives into the train station, and they stay there for a while. And Mr. Ramsey like offers him a cigarette, which is kind of like a big deal, I guess. I don't know,
Yeah.
but the speaker made it sound like a big deal, and I
Yeah.
was like,
I think it was, like, more than. Wait, was it one cigarette or was it, like, a whole pack?
no, he offered him one when they were sitting there. And then like
Okay.
as he was saying goodbye, he like offered another one and he declined. Well, he didn't decline, but he like paused. And so Mr. Ramsey just like then took the whole package of I think it was jalons or something. And like yeah, like of the cigarettes and just stuck it in his pocket. And then the narrator got on the train.
Yeah, and then I think he just kept the pack of cigarettes. Like,
Yeah, he just kept it.
yeah, he
Because
never
Mr.
used them.
Ramsey like walked away.
Yeah. And he never used them. Like, he just kept them.
Yeah, yeah. And then like after he got off the train and was supposed to board the other train, he just didn't board the other train, which is kind of weird. He just like left and stayed in a hotel and then got a job um, again where he was waitressing like before he gone to school.
Mm.
Interesting.
Oh,
Interesting. Yeah, it says
yeah.
I didn't go home. Instead, I got off the train in New York and cashed in the rest of my ticket and took a room at the Y. I'm guessing the Y is a hotel.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so next chapter.
Yeah,
Okay, one.
that's the beginning of the next chapter.
Yeah, one
Um,
for the books. Okay. Wait. So, did the narrator, like, go to the military and stuff?
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think there's a part where like it explains um what he did. He was like he worked as a what is it called? He bussed tables, and that's what he was doing when Ernest Hemingway killed himself. And then afterward, he was room service, and then restaurant waiter, picture framer, a Brinks guard, a plumber's assistant, and then a waiter again. And then eventually he went and joined the military. He enlisted in the army and he went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes on to talk about how it kind of sounds like a author's like autobiography, like
Yeah.
on the back of the book, how you like see the author and you get like a little snippet of their life story, and he like always pictured like his life on the back of the page, like on the back of a book, even though he never really wrote anymore.
Yeah. And that was like interesting because it's like none of those are like things that authors have to do to be authors, but it's like so many authors do all those things, and it might be because like that's just something authors like have.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of surprising that
Yeah,
like
it's
so
kind of
many
like
authors,
authors. Yeah,
and
it's
so
kind
many
of like
authors went to the
authors
military.
need their own story in
Yeah,
order to be able to write a story.
yeah.
Interesting.
But like he was doing it just so that it would look like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think
Um,
he really cared about the military that much because like it wasn't really ever described that much in
yeah,
detail or anything.
yeah, especially when he goes on to talk about like he gets asked like why did you join the military, and he's like I don't even really know. And they're like, oh, you must have done it for like saving your country and stuff, and he's like, no, that's not why I did it. Um, so
Yeah,
we never like really know the actual reason that he.
it's probably because it was one for the books.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. And then after that, I think that's when he mailed Susan Friedman a letter.
Yeah, the person he plagiarized from. He was like, "Oh my God, I
Yeah,
plagiarized from you. Come talk to me."
yeah, and he's like, "I'm so sorry" and stuff, and she was like, "It's okay. Plagiarism is like the best form of flattery or something."
Yeah,
And so
because
then he gets a phone number and they go out for lunch. And
yeah,
he kind of has like this weird, he has like this hope that like they're gonna fall in love and just from this one meeting and it'd be like super funny.
but
But
like
like,
that didn't happen.
yeah, it like says on like page 158, suppose a ridiculous supposition I knew, but just suppose we fell in love and ended up together. Like that would be really funny,
Yeah,
honestly. But yeah, but like by the end of it, he kind of realizes like, no, this isn't a love story waiting to happen. It's just a rant. Like they're never gonna see each other again
yeah.
after this.
And also the interesting thing is that like she didn't even become a writer. Like he wanted her to become a writer more than she wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she viewed writing in a completely different way than he did. Um, like she like actually hated the school she went to. She hated and the schools, and he actually really liked it. And so he just ended up keeping his like opinions to himself because he just didn't want
Yeah.
to
Oh
learn
yeah, and she's like going to medical school, I think.
medical school.
Yeah, she
What's
went
it
to
called?
Ohio State to stay close to her sister and was now in her second year at Georgetown Medical School.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like this whole interaction kind of felt like one of those in conclusion chapters in a book, like at the end of the actual story. It's like
Yeah,
whatever happens like after to the characters.
hmm like the 6 years later.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. Um.
Except this one was like 50 pages long.
Yeah, this one's like super super long, and yeah, that's basically it. For that part. And she kind of calls writing selfish, like it makes you selfish.
Yeah,
That's what she said. And
yeah. I mean
he
that makes
was
sense
shocked
because it's
to
like, oh, look at what I wrote. Everybody, look at me.
hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, they say farewell, and he goes and gets drunk. A few bars.
Wow.
Um, Lovely.
Just like the people he admired.
Yay! Then we're on to the next chapter,
Oh,
entitled, and I can't speak, entitled Bulletin.
bulletin.
Yeah,
I
and it
forgot.
basically kind of talks about, it's kind of like what you were saying about like the fast forwarding into the future. It talks about how um, George had gotten a scholarship and went through Yale, and Stanford, and Purcell didn't send anything, but Jeff like would constantly send stuff with their accomplishments about like their farms and stuff. He never heard from Bill again, and then like they learned, then he learned about like Dean Makepeace's heart attack at the school, and I
Oh
think
yeah,
he also
when
got
was
from
the heart
Hillary.
attack?
Huh?
When was the heart attack? Like,
It was in 1967,
was it like
and it was while
before?
he was walking to class.
Wait, what? Oh,
It was in 1967 while walking to class.
walking to, yeah. Was that like
He was
before?
69.
Was that before the narrator got like suspended or expelled or whatever?
No, that was after.
That was after.
And he had married one of the school secretaries when he came back.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. So this was after. Um, well, I think Dean Makepeace is also like named Arch. I guess like that's what Mr. Ramsey called him. So yeah.
yeah, it gives the kind of like brief snippet of Dean Makepeace's like death and his like later in life when he gets back to the school, and then it goes on to talk about the main narrators, how he was invited to come speak at the school, and how he like declined that offer, and then he met up with Mr. Ramsey, and he like apologized for not going and such,
Oh
because he
yeah.
felt like he needed to keep his memory of the school in case he were to write about it, which I also think was kind of weird because he had never written like once he left the school. So why would he write it now?
Yeah. And also like what's interesting was that like he thought that everybody like hated him or whatever, but like um Mr. Ramsey was telling him that, oh no, like everyone's like always like wanting you to come and like we have a seat saved for you.
Yeah, yeah. And then like after that, it kind of just like goes on to like talk about Mr. Ramsey talks about school a bit with the narrator, and he's like, yeah, and that's pretty much like where the main portion of like the book kind of ends, I guess.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on to Master, in which they talk about Arch, who is Dean Makepeace,
Yeah.
and his like life after he had left the morning of um, the main boys' expulsion. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Uh,
yeah, he kind of just talks about his life after leaving and how he wished to go back to teaching. Mm.
who is Mr. Price?
Mr. Price is another master at the school, I'm guessing.
Uh,
Um, Based on like what they were talking about and such, like the fundraiser, and how like the parents had only like spent like $40 or something. I don't know. Yeah. So
mm, yeah, and like we already kind of talked about Arch, so like is that it or
yeah. And then it's like about Arch's life, and how he went back to the school, and that's
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Um,
and like, did we talk about how like, okay, how he like hurt his leg?
oh yeah, he hurt his leg in the ambulance accident when he was driving backward up a hill.
Yeah, and then like, uh, what happened exactly?
He was driving backward up a hill because the ambulances like weren't able to go forward up a hill, and there was like another car coming, I guess, and he like tried to like swerve to get out of the way, but he didn't do it right or like in time or whatever, and so his partner jumped out of the vehicle, but he wasn't able to escape, and so he like broke his arm and his like collarbone and other things, and then but like he had literally like shattered his knee, so it never like fully healed,
Yeah,
and he had to walk with a cane
yeah,
for the rest of his life.
and then everyone just thought that like it was from serving in the military, but like,
Yeah,
did
which
he
it
ever?
technically was, but like not in the way they think. Like they probably think it was like something much grander, where like he was shot and he would like had to crawl to safety or something like that.
Yeah, but like that never
Something
happened.
much more dramatic
Yeah,
than a
and
stupid ambulance accident.
yeah. And then they thought that he was somehow connected to Ernest Hemingway because of that.
Yeah, because they had both like hurt their legs in, and they had both worked in ambulances, and they had both worked in the same like area of where the war was taking place.
Yeah,
Except
so
they worked for two different ambulance like companies or something. I'm not.
yeah, and like he's never even talked to like Ernest Hemingway, so
Yeah, he's never even like set his eyes on the man.
yeah,
So that's majorly the whole basis of the book.
yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, we're done.
We're done. Yay.
Okay, I'm ending this.